I've decided to start a new life without you." Those words cut through the laughter in the elegant restaurant where we'd gathered to celebrate my daughter's university graduation. Daniel, my husband of 26 years, stood with his champagne glass halfway raised, replacing the toast he was supposed to give for Sophie's big day with a declaration that froze the room. The soft clatter of cutlery stopped. Conversations ended mid-sentence. Dozens of faces turned toward us, waiting for the explosion tears, shouting, "A scene." But I didn't give them that. I smiled. "Thank you for finally being honest. My name is Clara Reynolds. I'm 52, and up until this moment, I'd been the picture of the devoted wife and mother. I'd pressed pause on my own ambitions to help Daniel chase his endless business ideas and identity crises. 3 ventures, 2 career switches, and too many finding himself. Moments to count. I raised our brilliant daughter, Sophie, who sat beside me now, her graduation cap still tilted on her head, her face frozen in disbelief. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Leila Carter, Daniel's much younger girlfriend, shifting in her seat at the back table right among people I once called friends. The same friends who apparently knew and said nothing. The same Leila who had been a guest at our Christmas dinners, who once phoned me for career advice. Keeping my calm, I reached into my bag and pulled out a cream envelope, sealed and deliberate. I placed it neatly by Daniel's plate. "What's this?" he asked, his confident smile flickering. "Something for you to read later," I said evenly. Then I turned to Sophie and kissed her cheek. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. This day is still yours." I stood up, smoothed my dress, and faced the silent crowd. "Please enjoy your meal. Have a lovely afternoon." Then I walked out head high, every step measured, as whispers followed me. Outside, the Charleston summer heat wrapped around me like fire, but I welcomed it. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The restaurant door burst open behind me, followed by Daniel's voice, no longer composed, but desperate and sharp. "Clara, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I didn't stop walking, just smiled faintly. The envelope he now clutched held the start of my carefully crafted revenge, a plan I'd been perfecting for months. All my life, I'd been the practical one. While Daniel dreamed recklessly, I held everything together. I saved for Sophie's education when he poured our money into failed ventures. I worked long nights as a financial analyst at Havenbrook & Co. When he quit his stable job to follow his passion, making designer furniture, an obsession that barely lasted half a year. My dream had always been to start my own firm helping women manage their finances. But I kept pushing it aside. After Sophie graduates, I'd tell myself. After Daniel finds his footing, 3 months ago, I started noticing small inconsistencies in our joint bank accounts. Tiny transfers to an account I didn't recognize. After 20 years of managing our finances, those numbers stood out like warning lights. I could have confronted Daniel right away, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the quiet distance that had been growing between us for months. So instead, I did what I do best. I started investigating, quietly and carefully. What I found was far worse than I expected. Daniel had been moving money into a private account for over a year. He'd been taking Leila to expensive restaurants, buying her jewelry, even inquiring about beachfront properties, all while lecturing me about cutting back for retirement. Then came the text messages left open one night on his unlocked phone. Messages about their new life together, about how he was finally breaking free. Messages that mentioned Sophie's graduation day, the day he'd planned to make his grand announcement. What Daniel never realized was that he was playing chess with someone who knew the board better than he did. I'd been a finance professional for 30 years. I knew how to trace money, And I remembered the prenuptial agreement he'd pushed for all those years ago, when I had the family wealth and he didn't. Ironically, that same prenup included a fidelity clause, the very thing that would unravel everything he thought he'd secured. While Daniel plotted his new beginning, I was preparing my ending. I consulted attorneys. I tracked every wire transfer. I gathered proof of the affair. I built my case brick by brick, and I timed everything precisely. He wanted to walk out after Sophie's graduation. He just didn't know he'd already been served with divorce papers that morning. They were already filed, quietly sealed, inaccessible to him. I was 3 steps ahead the entire time. After leaving the restaurant, I didn't look back. I drove straight home, to our colonial house in Charleston's historic district, the same house Daniel had already promised Leela, according to his texts. When I walked in, everything looked unchanged. The framed photos, the antique grandfather clock that once belonged to my father, the leather couch where we had planned our future, all still there, but none of it felt the same. Upstairs, I found Daniel's luggage packed neatly in the back of the closet, ready for his big exit tomorrow. I smiled. He was always meticulous about his clothes, careless about everything else. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from friends, from Sophie, even from Martha, Daniel's sister who'd flown in for the graduation. I only replied to one, "I'm fine, sweetheart. This isn't yours to carry. Enjoy your day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." I'd kept Sophie shielded from the truth for months. She'd be upset, maybe even angry, but I knew she'd understand in time. She had my pragmatism and her father's charm. That combination had carried her to the top of her class. 3 hours later, I heard Daniel's car pull into the driveway. The front door slammed. "Clara," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "Where are you?" I was sitting calmly in the living room, laptop open, reviewing documents. When he stormed in, face red, the envelope from earlier crushed in his fist, I closed the computer and looked up. "What is this?" he demanded. "You served me divorce papers. Today of all days. I thought the timing was perfect," I said evenly. "You wanted a new life. I'm just helping you get there. You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted. "Just like you had the right to choose Leela. We both made choices, Daniel." He sneered. "The prenup expired years ago. Any lawyer will tell you that." I smiled faintly. "Actually, it didn't. Section 12 states the fidelity clause stays active for the entire marriage. Your lawyer would have told you that, if you'd bothered to hire one." The color drained from his face. The very contract he demanded to protect himself would now strip him of everything. The house, the coastal property, his share of the retirement fund. His grand announcement had just become the costliest performance of his life. "You can't do this to me," he said, collapsing onto the couch. "You did it to yourself." I replied, "We built this life together. You're the one who decided to burn it down." His phone buzzed again, over and over. He ignored it, but I knew who it was. Leela, wondering why her plan wasn't unfolding as promised. "You've always been cold," he said bitterly. "Calculated? What about our history, 26 years? Doesn't that mean anything?" I studied him, the man I'd loved for half my life. The man who'd held my hand through miscarriages. The man who once surprised me with a weekend in Asheville for our 10th anniversary. When did he change? Or had he always been this person, and I'd just refused to see it? Our history meant everything. I said quietly, "That's why your betrayal hurts this much." For a brief second, his expression softened. "Then maybe we can fix it. I made a mistake, Clara. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake," I said, voice steady. "This was a year-long plan. You hid money, you lied, you humiliated me in public." "You're exaggerating," he muttered. "Am I?" I picked up my phone and hit play. His voice filled the room. "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. Public setting's better. She won't make a scene." Then Leela's voice, "And she doesn't know about the money." Daniel again. None. Clara trusts me completely. That's her weakness. He froze. You recorded us. That's illegal. Not in South Carolina. I said calmly. 1. Party consent. And don't worry. I didn't record your private moments. Just the ones where you plotted to defraud me. He stood pale and shaking. I need to make some calls. Good idea. I said, start with your attorney. I'll be staying at Martha's tonight. Martha's, he stared at me. My sister's, I nodded. She's quite upset with you, actually. She saw you and Leela together last Christmas. You told her it was nothing. When she realized it wasn't, she told me. His voice cracked. Everyone's turning against me. Ironic, isn't it? I picked up my purse and overnight bag. You have until tomorrow evening to clear your things. After that, the locks change. As I reached the door, his voice followed, breaking. What about Sophie? Have you thought about her? I turned, the calm finally slipping. Don't you dare use our daughter as an excuse. You weren't thinking about her when you promised Leela that beach house. His phone buzzed again. He looked at it, groaned. Problem? I asked. It's Leela. He muttered. She's already at the apartment. She's moved in. I couldn't help but smile. The apartment you leased under both your names? He nodded, confused. You might want to check with the leasing office. I told him before stepping outside. That apartment application never went through. It was flagged for credit inconsistencies. The agent called our home line to confirm details. I handled it myself. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving Daniel to face the first of many consequences. His meticulously crafted new life was already falling apart faster than he could comprehend. Martha lived in a charming bungalow across town, near the university where she taught literature. When I arrived, she greeted me with a long, fierce hug. I just heard from Sophie, she said, pulling me inside. Are you all right? I'm better than I thought I'd be. I admitted, following her into the kitchen, where a half-empty bottle of wine waited on the counter. I can't believe he did it like that, Martha said, pouring 2 glasses. A public announcement at her restaurant. Has he completely lost it? It was deliberate, I replied, taking the glass. He wanted to humiliate me. A public rejection leaves no room for dignity unless you refuse to give them the reaction they expect. Martha shook her head, her jaw tightening. He's always had a flair for drama, but this is beyond anything I imagined. We moved to her sunroom, a cozy space surrounded by potted plants and overstuffed bookshelves. Martha had never married. She'd always chosen freedom and academia over domestic chaos. Over the years, I'd sometimes envied that. So, she asked finally, curiosity glinting behind her concern, what did you put in that envelope that rattled him so badly? I told her everything. The divorce filing, the hidden transfers, the proof of his affair, and the prenup that would leave him with far less than he had planned. The prenup, Martha said with a dry laugh. I remember when he insisted on that. Dad had just given him money for his first startup, and he wanted to protect his assets. She chuckled bitterly. Oh, the irony. My phone rang. Sophie, I took a breath before answering. Mom, she said immediately, her voice trembling. I'm coming to Aunt Martha's. Honey, you don't have to. I'm already on my way, she interrupted. Dad's telling everyone you've lost it, that you've been planning this for months. He's saying awful things. Of course he was. Daniel always rewrote stories where he was the victim. Let him talk, I said quietly. The truth will surface soon enough. 20 minutes later, Sophie arrived still in her graduation dress, her makeup streaked from tears. She fell into my arms like she used to when nightmares woke her as a little girl. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered into my shoulder. I didn't want to ruin your final semester, I said softly. You worked too hard for this day. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Well, Dad took care of ruining it anyway. We moved to the living room, where Sophie finally heard everything. The affair, the stolen money, the staged humiliation. I knew something was off, she said, her voice shaking. He's been distant, always on his phone, but I never imagined. None of us want to imagine that, Martha said gently. My phone buzzed again. A message from Philip Moore, my attorney. The emergency motion had been approved. All accounts connected to Daniel's secret transfers were now frozen. He'd have limited funds for basic expenses, but the beach property plans were finished. I showed the message to Martha and Sophie. Good, Sophie said firmly. He deserves it. Her loyalty warmed me, though I stayed grounded. He's still your father, I reminded her. Your relationship with him is separate from this. Maybe someday, she murmured. But not right now. He hugged me this morning, told me how proud he was. While planning to blow everything apart, the doorbell rang. Martha glanced toward the hallway, then turned back to me, uneasy. It's Daniel, she said quietly. And he's not alone. I felt my stomach tighten, but my face stayed calm. When she led them into the living room, Daniel looked furious, jaw tight, eyes blazing. Beside him stood Leela, visibly uncomfortable, shifting her weight, her confidence cracked. She was 37, 17 years younger than me, with perfect hair and that kind of self-assurance that only comes before life truly tests you. Clara, you need to stop this madness, Daniel barked. His voice had lost its charm. It was all control now, slipping through his fingers. I set my wine glass down, leaned back slightly, and looked him square in the eye. Madness, I said quietly. No, Daniel, this is clarity. Unfreeze the accounts, Daniel demanded, his voice strained. We can discuss this like reasonable adults. Before I could answer, Sophie stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of me. Maybe you should have tried being reasonable before you humiliated Mom in public, she said, her voice trembling with anger. Daniel blinked, as if just noticing her for the first time. Sophie, this doesn't concern you. It doesn't concern me, she repeated, incredulous. You destroyed our family in front of 50 people on my graduation day. Tell me again how this doesn't concern me. Leela touched Daniel's arm. Daniel, maybe we should go. He shook her off. No, I'm not leaving until Clara agrees to be rational about this. Martha crossed her arms. My sister-in-law seems to be the only rational person here. You're the one who started this mess, Daniel. I stayed seated, composed, watching the scene unfold. For years I'd been the peacemaker, the buffer who kept everyone calm. But that role was gone now, and it felt liberating. The accounts stay frozen until the preliminary hearing. I said evenly, that's in 3 days. The judge will determine the division then. 3 days, Daniel sputtered. What am I supposed to do until then? You have your personal account, I reminded him, the one you've been moving money into for over a year. That should be enough. Leela's head snapped toward him. You have a separate account, with how much in it? An awkward silence filled the room. Clearly, Daniel hadn't been entirely transparent with her either. He ignored her question, his voice rising. This is vindictive, Clara. This isn't you. Then maybe you never really knew me, I said calmly, just as I clearly never really knew you. Sophie turned to Leela. Did you know he was going to announce it like that, at my graduation celebration? Leela hesitated, eyes flickering between us. I thought he was going to speak to your mother privately, she admitted softly. That announcement caught me off guard. Daniel shot her a sharp look, cracks forming in the polished front they had tried to present. I think you both should leave, Martha said firmly. You've done enough damage for one day. Sweetheart, Daniel said, turning to Sophie. Relationships change. People grow apart. Someday you'll understand that. Sophie's face hardened, her voice quiet but fierce. What I understand is that you're a coward. You couldn't even give Mom the dignity of a private conversation. And while I was working 2 jobs to pay for my textbooks, you were stealing from us. Daniel paled. That's not how it It's exactly how it was. She cut him off. Please leave, Dad. I can't even look at you right now. Silence fell. Then, slowly, Daniel turned toward the door. Leela followed, her heels clicking against the hardwood. At the threshold, he turned back, eyes dark. This isn't over, Clara. He warned. I met his gaze without flinching. You're welcome to try. When the door finally shut behind them, Sophie sank onto the couch beside me, tears streaming down her cheeks. I've never talked to Dad like that, she whispered. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Sometimes standing up for what's right hurts, sweetheart, but it's still right. Martha brought over fresh glasses of wine. To new beginnings, she said quietly. I clinked my glass against hers. To new beginnings. The preliminary hearing took place 3 days later, on a rainy Tuesday morning. The courthouse was small, quiet, the air heavy with damp paper and tension. I arrived with my attorney, Philip Moore. Daniel came with a young associate clearly out of his depth, an inexperienced corporate lawyer he'd hired last minute. Yet another hasty decision. The judge, a stern older woman with a no-nonsense expression, flipped through the prenuptial documents. This agreement appears to be valid, she said, looking over her glasses at Daniel's lawyer. Do you contest its terms? The young man cleared his throat nervously. Your Honor, we believe the agreement has expired due to the duration of the marriage. The judge arched a brow. Section 18 clearly states it remains active for the length of the marriage, plus any resulting legal proceedings. There's no expiration date. Daniel leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. The lawyer's discomfort was almost painful to watch. The court also notes evidence of undisclosed fund transfers. The judge continued. Those actions violate Section 20(3) of the financial disclosure requirements. She paused, eyes lifting toward Daniel. The freeze on joint assets will remain. Mr. Reynolds' personal account will stay accessible for living expenses only. The family home will remain in Mrs. Reynolds' possession per the infidelity clause. Daniel's face turned scarlet. This is outrageous, he muttered under his breath. The judge didn't look up from her papers. Mr. Reynolds, I suggest you reread the contract you signed. This court will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing after discovery. Outside the courtroom, he caught up to me. Clara, please, he said quietly. 26 years together, doesn't that count for something? It did, I said, meeting his eyes. Until you decided it didn't. I walked away, leaving him standing in the empty corridor, alone with the echo of his own choices. Word spread quickly. Friends called, some offering sympathy, others sniffing for gossip. I said the same thing to everyone. Daniel and I are separating. Sometimes life changes. Meanwhile, Daniel's carefully built image, devoted husband, successful entrepreneur, began to collapse. The financial freeze meant he couldn't buy the property he'd promised Leela. The luxury car he'd ordered was canceled. His business partners grew nervous. 2 weeks after the hearing, Martha called, amusement lacing her voice. Have you heard the latest? She asked. Leela moved out. I smiled faintly already. She found out his company's bleeding money. Turns out those savings he bragged about don't exist. She told her friend she didn't sign up to date a man with financial problems. I laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been in months. He was always good at building illusions. Martha's laughter joined mine, echoing through the kitchen. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. The financial safety net I'd quietly maintained separate from our joint accounts gave me the freedom Daniel never saw coming. I rented a modest office space downtown and began setting up the consultancy I had dreamed of for years. My first clients were 2 women navigating divorces of their own. Soon, referrals followed. I specialized in helping women understand and protect their finances during life's ups upheavals, divorce, widowhood, career transitions. The work fulfilled me in a way my corporate job never had. Sophie, who had recently started a marketing job in Charleston, called often. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she said one afternoon as I described my growing list of clients. "You're helping people through their hardest moments." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me sooner," I told her, preparing women to stand on their own no matter what comes next. Being valued for my expertise instead of my ability to keep peace was a revelation, one that felt both powerful and overdue. The final divorce hearing arrived on what would have been our 27th anniversary. Fitting, really. Daniel showed up looking worn down. His business had faltered without my financial management. Leela was long gone, already dating a developer from Savannah. Most of our friends had quietly distanced themselves after the truth came out. The judge upheld the prenuptial agreement in full. Daniel left with his belongings, his struggling company, and what remained in his private account, barely enough for a small apartment, after paying his lawyer. I kept the house, my savings, and 70% of our shared investments, exactly as the fidelity clause dictated. The irony was perfect. The document he'd once written to protect himself had become his undoing. Outside the courthouse, Daniel approached me one last time. "I made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "Is there any chance we could—" "No," I interrupted, gentle but firm. "That door is closed," he nodded, finally understanding. "I hope you find happiness, Clara. You deserve it." It was perhaps the first honest thing he had said in years. 6 months later, Reynolds Financial Transitions was thriving. I'd moved into a larger office and hired 2 associates. Sophie visited often, proud and smiling. "You know what's funny," she said one evening. "If Dad had just been honest, he might have kept half of everything." "Some people can't see past what they want in the moment," I replied. The woman who once defined herself as a wife and mother had become something new: mentor, business owner, and advocate. That envelope I'd handed Daniel at the restaurant wasn't just my escape plan. It was the key to a door I hadn't known existed. Behind it, I found not revenge, but reinvention. In securing my future, I'd reclaimed something far more valuable myself.